Hi, everyone. Let me do my pro forma apology here. Sorry for the odd lighting. I just have nothing, as I look out my window, even though it's shaded, you can see the shades on my face. Um, until for another hour, um, the sun is going to see it's a little bit better now than it was in video number one. Number two, I'm hurrying a tiny bit because there, see, the sun's back out. There's a tree with no leaves, a big oak tree with no leaves, and when the sun comes out from the cloud, it shines in my face. When the sun covers the cloud, then it's a lot better. But that will go away as the day progresses. My carpenter, as I said before, you can see. As I said before, my contractor is coming to to build bookshelves in this room, which is my upstairs study, and then in the downstairs living room. And so that's obviously a big project for him and for me. And the echo will, of course, go away when there's books here. But, so I really don't have a choice now. And this is a better place, quieter, excuse me, than my office at my work. But what I want to do is, this is, as I was saying, we're moving into week 7, and I already made a video talking about the kind of mechanics and the administration, and trying to put you at ease about that. In this video, what I want to do is talk about the humanities. And I want to say, first of all, I want to really compliment you because, I think that in a way, this is an easy class to kind of, I don't know, to go through the motions of doing and sort of not really, put your full heart into it. However, no one in this class has done that. I mean, everyone has taken these, trying to duck the sun there. Let's try it like this. Yes, this works better. That's the ticket here. I thought. No one has done that. Everyone has taken the assignments really seriously and done a really, really good job. I know those cultural experience assignments are difficult, for many reasons. You know better than I do why and how they're difficult. But everyone is really engaged in them. They're really, really interesting. And thank you very much for that. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, I want to address the last 2 weeks of the semester here. Okay, first of all, I would like to make a suggestion, and that is, don't get lost in the detail. I know there's, we've done a lot of readings, and the readings are hard. They're not easy. The discussions have required effort. I mean, they're not easy, pencil whipping type questions are hard. They're all hard questions. And the same thing, you've not backed off. Most of you have done all of them. As I've also said, not any single one counts very much. So, I mean, it's not as though you're going to, if you skip a discussion, you're going to have grading problems. That's just not going to happen. It's not the way I function. That's not what this class is for. As I said many times, the one thing I really don't want to do is turn the discussions. I didn't want to do is turn the discussions into tests. Okay, because it's not what a discussion is. A discussion is free in exchange, and a free exchange. Okay, so don't get lost in the detail of the class. Here's what you should do instead. I want you to think about what the humanities are. I want you not to kind of bounce between music and painting and opera and literature and religion and mythology and on, but rather think about the very important fact that from the beginning of time, from the beginning of humanity, from the very, very earliest part of the human experience, these forms of the humanities have existed in some form. Okay? I want to pause. I want you to think about this, that, to use the cliche, the cavemen were drawing absolutely beautiful pictures on the cave walls that are as good and as interesting and as insightful as anything Picasso ever did. Okay, there has been storytelling since forever, basically from the earliest points and the earliest moments in the human experience, the humanoids, were exchanging stories in some form or another. It's the same with music. The music goes back, some form of basic music goes back to the beginning of time. Now, likewise, there has been some sense of the divinity, the divine nature of life and humanity and the human experience since the beginning of time. So what I want you to do, rather than get lost in little detail of, how to interpret music and how to interpret religion and the different forms of music and the different levels of music and all that stuff, which are important. Okay, it's not as though they're trivial. They're not trivial. But I want you to think about what binds those and what brings them together. And what unites and links them, because they're all coming from the same place, okay? The same kinds of needs are there. And I think if you meditate on that, they're all forms of art in some way or another. And to think about what is the common source of art, what is the human need to express himself or herself in an artistic way. And then what is the difference between that and sort of practical communication? Because those are two really, really different things. And I think if you do that, I think you'll be full of insights. And I think that although all of us come from that, to that question, from a sort of different backgrounds, different interests, different ways of thinking, I think that the thing that will be similar in all our reflections on this question will be about the basic nature of man and the basic nature of life. And there we move from complexity and intricacy and multiple modes and multiple methodologies and all that stuff to a sort of simplicity. That is, what is the human need for art? Where does that come from? Okay, so that's my first point. My second point is I want you to take that question and apply it to yourself and ask yourself frontally, where does the need for art in my own life come from? And everyone, let me just be honest and frank. I want you to look back into your childhood and ask yourself, where do you first start appropriating art? When do you first start expressing yourself? And think about yourself as 4-year-old kids, because the memory doesn't go back much more than 4 years old. I might ask why that's the case, but that's another subject. And ask, when you first encountered and tried to express yourself in a musical form, when you started to draw, when you started to think about something sort of beyond human experience, and that is applying the question of what are the humanities, what is art, to your own life and looking at the deepest roots of that in you. And the same thing, I think that's a very, very rich avenue of experience. And the third thing, I'm checking the time because I really try to keep these around 10 minutes if I can. Okay. The other thing that I want you to think about, and this is a very hard thing because we're not used to thinking about this stuff at all. But my third question is even harder, and that is, okay, if we assume that painting, storytelling, music, and the sense of the divine go back to the beginning of man, the beginning of humanity, then what we're saying is that the essence of the human experience has to do with art. Man is fundamentally artistic. Man is the being who expresses himself in the humanities, to use that term. So my third question is, what is our link with the earliest humans? Those humans who were squatting out in the savannah of Africa, those humans who were living in caves, those humans who were looking out at the sea and trying to figure out how to get the fish, and all of that sort of thing. What is our link? How are we similar to them? In most cases, we're different. We buy our clothes in China. Our lives are programmed. Our lives are organized according to the economic system. We go on the freeways. We have all those things are different from the life of the earliest humans. But there is a link, and that link has to do with art. And so I want you to, it's a hard question, and a hard consideration to see if you can identify with those storytellers 15,000 years ago telling their stories. In what way, what is the connection between you and the people who were listening to the Homeric poets out there next to the Aegean, living, in very modest circumstances, at the mercy of nature, not really understanding, what the earth was, where it is, the relationship between the earth and the sun. And so there's so many differences, but there's a link. And that's what I want you to think about. So the three things that I want you to think about as the course concludes are, number one, the connection between all the arts. They're coming from the same place in human needs and in the human personality. And so I want you to think about what that source is. That's number one. Number two, what binds all those diverse forms together? Okay, what is it? What do they have in common? And the third thing is, what is the common link between us and very early humanity? And I think if you, this is not an assignment, you're not getting graded on it, but I think if you mull over that and if you ponder that, you'll also come up with the realization of how important the humanities are. And they are asking and dealing with very, very fundamental questions about the nature of human life. And if we lose track of that kind of questioning, if we're no longer able to ask those kinds of questions, what will that mean? And I think that question is a very scary one. Because if we lose our roots in our past, if we lose our roots in our soul, that means that our choices for the planet, our choices for our children, our choices for the human future are not going to be valid and not going to be good, and grave harm will be done. So, to conclude, the humanities are really important. They're really important because they concern a form of thinking which is very spiritual and really divine. Okay, and that's our connection with the deepest layers and the deepest levels of our own personalities and the deepest levels of the human experience. Thanks, everyone.